Welcome to the Social Engineer Podcast, a Human Element series. This is episode 262, if you can believe that. I'm Chris Hadnaghi, CEO and founder of Social Engineer LLC, the Innocent Lives Foundation, and the Institute for Social Engineering. I've been doing this podcast since way back in 2009. I'm sure if you're involved in any kind of company at all, you cannot be one day without being concerned about what's going on around the world when it comes to social engineering attacks. And what we've seen recently is a 550% increase in phishing, according to the FTC. And that's just in this country alone. That's a scary statistic, if you ask me, because it's not just in our business. They're attacking our grandparents, our kids. They're using this type of methodology for everybody, especially since the major hubs for cell phone service have all been breached. If you're trying to figure out how you could stay safe from this as a company, hop on over to social-engineer.com. Check us out, have a meeting with us, and we can talk about what we can do to keep you and your people safe. While you're there, download the State of Phishing Report for 2024. A lot of great information in there that might help you. Also, if you're an enthusiast about social engineering, you should come over to our Slack channel. You can see the link in the show notes down below. If you can't find it, just ping me on LinkedIn and I'll help you out. But we got about 1,800 people in there every day talking about all aspects of social engineering. It's a family-friendly and legal chat. So if you're looking to better yourself and to learn more about how humans make decisions and to use this in everyday life, you can come on in and join us there. Also, I want to invite everyone to take a moment to go check out innocentlivesfoundation.org. If you're not familiar with that nonprofit, it was started 6.5 years ago with the mission of helping law enforcement agencies uncover and mask and unmask people who are creating child abuse material and trafficking children. And I cannot be prouder. We are up to 520 cases that we were able to assist law enforcement with. I'm so proud of that number. And we're going strong. We're doing a lot more. So we're not a non-vigilante group. What that means is we're not out there making believe that we're a 13-year-old girl. We know a lot of those cases get kicked out of court. We are using the skills that we have to help geolocate these people and then handing them over to law enforcement. So super proud of the work that we're doing. You can support us by going to innocentlivesfoundation.org and volunteering your time or donating money if you want to help support the nonprofit there. In addition, if you're a parent or caregiver and you're looking for information that you need to help train your kids or talk to them about this topic, you can find it there. Last but not least, if you like the music on the show, then it is none other than Clutch, the best rock and roll band on earth. You can find more information at clutchmerch.com. Go check them out. If you like the topics, give us a thumbs up and a like, and keep with your comments, please. We love your comments and your ideas and your suggestions for future podcast themes. Now let's get to the reason we're here. I'm really excited about today's guest. Shawn Livingston, he's a combat veteran, but he battled heroin addiction after serving his country, as seen in the documentary 100 Miles to Redemption. Now, Shawn, and I can tell you this because we hung out together just a little bit ago. He is a symbol of hope and strength, excelling in ultra running and in fitness. He hosts the I Am Redemption podcast, providing a platform for stories of triumph and fostering community. He also inspires through motivational speaking, spreading the message of resilience and redemption. And his journey proves that no matter how far you fall, you can always rise again. Shawn, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show today.
My pleasure, Chris. Thank you so much.
So let's jump right into it. So, obviously your bio, you served the country, you went to war. What happened? How did you get addicted to heroin during that time?
So I'd say probably the addiction gene was with me from the start. I was a partier as a youth. I got in a bad car accident, my junior year of high school. So that was kind of my first taste with painkillers and stuff like that. It didn't really develop into an issue or a problem, but I was partying like I thought most other kids kind of were at that age. But Oxycontin absolutely leveled my area at one point. And so I originally left. I did 6 years in the Air Force, got out of the Air Force and came back home and just came back to something completely different. My area, Northeast Ohio, is just completely run down. Everybody's on Oxycontin. So that was kind of where I first started getting, really into it, where I would say it started developing it as a problem. And then I had tried a stint in treatment, tried to kind of get myself together, and then actually went into the Army. That's what originally brought me to Texas, and stayed sober for a little while, but would eventually get training to go to Iraq. I got injured doing some drills and tweaked my back the wrong way. I had herniated 2 discs, and they were pinching my sciatic nerve. And so unfortunately at that time in the military, if the education on the opioid epidemic was not what it is today. And so that was really their only recourse, was just give me big bottles of painkillers. And and get steroid injections. And so it just was dumping fuel on the fire and, got me back going again. And then eventually as the disease progressed would lead me into heroin and then a whole bunch of trouble with the law and everything else under the sun, I guess we could say.
Geez, that's a pretty harrowing story because, I mean, it's not like you were looking for that to happen. You needed the medicine obviously that sounded super painful with having discs pinching your nerves. So it wasn't like you went out looking to go get high or addicted to anything. It just happened because of the circumstances you were in.
Right.
So how did that lead you down a path with then law enforcement and other things like that? Like, how did that happen?
So I can kind of take a look back at my life and realize like I do very well in structure. Past tense, when I had structure in my life, things were good. And so growing up as an athlete, I had sports in my life, but that car accident kind of took sports out of my life. So that's where I could see it start going left. And then the structure of the military, I did real well, but unfortunately, drugs and alcohol would lead me to no longer have that structure. And so when I got out of the military and didn't have it anymore, it was the wheels fell off. And so within no time, I caught a DUI, caught two possession cases for heroin here in the state of Texas. And then they sent me away for 2 years, had to do a 2-year stint in prison and then got back out and really didn't know what I needed. I didn't know how to get sober, where to go. I mean, I knew people went to treatment. And so I just bounced around for a long time and just kind of continued to hang around the wrong people. And I didn't have any purpose. I didn't have any passion. I didn't have any direction. And so I hung out with people that were much of the same. And so I got the same results. Then I would end up getting into some more trouble and catching 2 more felonies for possession of heroin. And then in the state of Texas, once you get three felonies, then they have the option to be able to charge you on your next one as a habitual criminal. And that's what they were going to do. And so I tell people all the time, I used to run around in the streets and I thought I was a real big tough guy. Until I stood in front of a judge one day and he looked me dead in the face and told me he wouldn't sentence me to anything under 20 years. And then all the tough guy stuff went right out of the window. That's when life got very real for me at that point.
You went from being like an honored combat veteran to being in prison multiple times. That's a big story. That's a really big story. So, jumping forward from that, so obviously now you have this moment in your life where you're looking at, I either got to change or I'm going to be in prison for probably the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. Is that enough motivation? Is that really enough motivation to make a change?
It was not a complete change, but when he looked in my face and told me he was going to send me away for that long, that's what it took for me to actually want to get sober for myself. And no longer try to get sober to like get out of trouble or to appease family or friends. Yeah. And so I was already under the impression I was going away for 20 years. So my mindset at that point was like, all right, let me see if I can actually kick the drugs, because when I do go to jail, I don't want to be in jail waiting to go to prison, going through withdrawals and all that. I don't want to be like that. And if I got to go do 20 years, I have a family right now that won't even speak to me. And so my mindset was on being able to do whatever I have to do to get my life as right as I could in that short amount of time to be able to go to prison, hoping my family would talk to me. And so I checked into treatment and at the VA, and I ended up doing 8 months of inpatient treatment at the VA. Wow. And so along that time, for whatever reason, I kept a folder, and in that folder, everything that I did, every note that I took, every worksheet I worked on, everything I did went into that folder. I also started getting involved with a 12-step program. And so a lot of those people kind of figured my story out and rallied behind me. And when it came time that I was getting ready to go to court, they were giving me a bunch of character letters. And so I ended up going and talking to my lawyer before our sentencing hearing, and I'd slid him the folder and he opened it up and his jaw just kind of dropped. He was not expecting that. He told me I had actually given him something to really work with. Not many clients do. And so he was able to go back to the judge and present it to the judge. And so the direction he gave me when I was leaving his office was, whatever you're doing, I need you to keep doing it. Let me talk to the judge and we'll get this figured out. And so I walked out of that office, and for the first time in as long as I can remember, I had this like sense of hope. Mm-hmm. And that was the one time where I knew it was like, all right, this is my last chance. So whatever I need to do, I'll do it. And so I went back to the VA and I tried to check back into the VA. and they told me I had done too much time there. So they turned me away. And so the only place that would take me, because at that time I'm considered a homeless veteran. And so, I mean, I wasn't on the street, but I didn't have a home record or anything like that. And so I found out about a place in Austin, Texas, and it was a 6-month inpatient treatment center. And so I just got done doing 8 months, and now I'm checking into a 6-month treatment center. But that was a big moment for me, because up to that point, and you'll see it with a lot of addicts or alcoholics, is we don't want to, I'll go to treatment. I just want to do the minimum of treatment. I don't want to be there longer than 30 days. I want to be there longer than 45, 90 days. And so at this time in my life, it was when I became absolutely willing to do whatever it would take. So 6 months more of treatment, no problem. I'll do it. And luckily in all that, it finally started to, once I got that little bit of hope, I just kind of ran with it and didn't look back. And so when it was all said and done, they ended up giving me max probation, which is 10 years probation. And in the state of Texas, when you make it to the halfway mark, if you do well, then you can basically go back to the judge and request to be released early. If you haven't failed any of your analysis, anything like that. And so I actually didn't even need to do that because I had done so well on probation. I got a phone call on the exact day that told me I had discharged probation at the 5-year mark. And so ever since that's happened, that kind of chapter has been closed, and I live my life very differently now.
So when you were first going to rehab, because you and I hung out in Texas for a little bit, so you're not a small man. What was your physical stature when you were first going to rehab?
When I first went to rehab, I was about 255, 260, fat. I had a big gut. Actually, it's funny. I was just telling somebody the other day, if you look at your body, your sternum kind of sticks straight down. My belly was so big, it actually pushed my sternum out. And then when I lost the weight, my sternum's still out. So if I suck my stomach in, you can see this little nub sticking out.
Wow.
But
so you were unhealthy on multiple levels.
Very, very much so. The injury, the back injury, and then, opioid addiction, it was just a lot of me laying around, not doing anything. And so, I can remember the day that I had all this sobriety time under my belt because I'd been in treatment for so long, and I took a look in the mirror and I hated who I saw. It didn't matter that I was sober. I just did not like or love myself. So
then what was the change then? Because I mean, just being with you like a couple months ago, I mean, you're huge now. So it's like and I don't mean huge in a fat way. Like you can like lift a truck or something. So I'm just curious, like, where did you go from that guy who finally kicked the addiction, but now had this weight problem, to who you are today?
So one of the most impactful things that ever happened to me was, and I'll try to shorten the answer for you, but I looked at all my areas of my life and wondered why, I ended up being in treatment in 12 times. Why couldn't I get sober? What was the problem? And so I would always put all my eggs in one basket. And so I get out of the military, they diagnosed me with PTSD, depression, anxiety disorder, panic disorder, just a laundry list of ailments. And then they just kind of hand me 15 bottles of pills and send me on my way. And so for me, I'm not saying medication's not the answer. For some people, absolutely, they need it. Yeah. For me, it just wasn't the answer. It was a Band-Aid to a bigger problem. So at the end of the day, it didn't keep me happy. It didn't keep me sober. And so then I kind of went all in on the spiritual route. And so I got into the 12 steps and worked that program. And for me, I would kind of get trapped in like a recovery bubble. Everything I did, everybody I talked to, every event I went to, it was just all recovery, recovery, recovery. So that became my world. It became my life. And what I never knew to put any thought on or to understand was that the recovery aspect was a foundation. And it was on me to find something to actually get back to living a life, find something that lit a fire up under me. And so I had never at any point, I was always an athlete growing up. But for whatever reason, I had never thought about the connections between like my physical health and then recovery, or physical health and my mental health. And so when I was in treatment, I had found out about a little running group that met in downtown Austin. And I decided that I wanted to lose a couple of pounds. So I went there. And I was not a runner growing up by any stretch of the imagination. If I was running without a basketball or a football in my hand, I was in trouble for something. It was punishment. And so I just showed up to this running group, and I finished a 2-mile run that day, and I was dead tired. And couldn't think I could do any more, but I just felt this sense of accomplishment. And I needed to feel that so bad. And so I just wanted more of that. So I kept going back to the runs, started meeting people in the running community. They would end up taking me out in the trail running world. And then they pushed me into the ultra running world. But it was a great group of people that saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. So they knew how to poke me competitively. And so I started running some races, and I'd get done with that distance and they'd kind of look at me and they're like, oh yeah, that's good. You could do more. And then the next thing I know, I'm running 30Ks, 50Ks, 100Ks, 100-miler. And so that was the running aspect. And so running and fitness just kind of started putting all the pieces of the puzzle together for me and connected me with the mental health and spiritual health. And, so I just continued to build on that. I ran and then, started messing around in the gym and had gotten an injury from the running just because I've been doing so much of it. And so that was kind of the perfect segue. If I can't run, then I guess I'll get in the gym. And so I learned all that, ended up getting my trainer certification. And then now it's just it's a staple in my life. It's what I do for my sanity. But in all honesty, it's the best mental health medication a doctor never prescribed to me, we'll say.
So I have to go back to something you said. You said you ran 100 miles. Like one run was 100 miles? I
did 27 and a half hours. It was the Pinhoti 100. It goes from Alabama to Georgia.
That doesn't even make sense to me, right? Like, it doesn't even make sense. That's crazy. 100 miles I mean, that, and is it straight 27? Do you stop? Like, how do you even like function?
So there's aid stations along the way. So about anywhere from 3, 5, 7 miles, it's on the Appalachian Trail. So you're navigating rugged terrain the whole time. And so at some point you have to be able to refill water, get calories in you. And so there's aid stations set up along the route. But me personally, I tried to get in and out of those aid stations because you're talking about like 2, 3 in the morning when it's raining and it's cold and you come into an aid station, they got some hot food and a propane heater going and stuff. It's awful easy to just sit there. But the longer I sit there, that's the more time I'm out there. So try to get in and out and then right back out onto the trail.
Man. Okay. That's crazy in itself. But so, let's pick apart the story a little bit. I mean, maybe someone's listening to this and maybe they don't have the same addiction. Maybe it's not heroin or it's, it's not as bad as you were there, but they're looking at their life and they want to make a change. What advice would you give someone who's like somewhere where they don't want to be and they need to be something different? Like what's a piece of advice that you would give them?
There's so many like cliche answers I could give. But the one I'll tell you that worked for me the best was just taking a look around and seeing the people I was choosing to surround myself with. So much of my life, I look at when the negative things were going, I was hanging around some negative people. When good things are going, I'm hanging around good people. And so there's a saying kind of in the recovery community that you walk into an AA meeting or a 12-step meeting and you look and find somebody that has what you want. Somebody that's honest, somebody that has an integrity, the way they carry themselves. Do they have friends? Does their family talk to them? Like so many different things. And so I made sure that anywhere I went that I had people that were far smarter than me, far better than me, far more motivated than me. And then it started to take hold. And so I hung around runners and I became a really good runner. Won a marathon, started consistently placing in ultra marathons all the time. And that was because of the people I was around. Same thing goes for the gym, or I want to be around like-minded people that are constantly pushing themselves, that they want to be better. And so, that's the biggest part is hanging around those people. And, in today's world, so much of our lives are set up to be easy. Everything's convenience and want to be easy. And there's an interesting study that just came out, and I'm not a scientist, so I'll butcher it, but basically there's a part of your brain in the middle that they find that can actually grow and get stronger. And if you look at people as they get older, the people with the smallest and weakest parts of those brain are obese people, people that are morbidly obese. And that is what they've now found is because there's people that are unwilling to do things they don't want to do, things that are hard. And that part of your brain only grows when you go do things you don't want to do. And so but then if you look at a lot of these professional athletes, endurance athletes, theirs are very big, very strong parts of their brain. And so I can take a look at that and then look at my life, and my life's the best when I'm constantly putting some things in my life in there that I don't want to do. As big as a runner as I was then, now I'm just as big in the gym, but I'm not the runner like I used to be. So before, running was like as easy as pie for me. Now it's takes a little bit different kind of motivation to want to go out there and run 10 miles. But it's getting out there and just doing it and having the good supportive people around you to help you make sure you stay accountable.
That's really great advice. You said something twice in your story when you were talking about it that I think was really pivotal for me. Is once when you were in court and the judge said he's going to put you for a maximum of 20 years. And then the second was when you were finally done with rehab and you looked in the mirror and you didn't like what you saw. Both of those times you said that you wanted to make a change for you and not for anyone else.
Yep.
I feel like that is such an important piece of this story because it's so hard. And I've been through things too, where I wanted to make change. You try to make a change for someone else and that person disappoints you. That change goes away or it never sticks. But when you make it for yourself, I mean, you're living proof. You're, how many years sober now?
Just celebrated 7 years on April 18th.
Congratulations. Right. I mean, 7 years sober and you look like you're a triathlete. You know what I mean? Like you can do anything. That's an amazing change, but that's because you wanted to do it for you.
Yeah.
Right? So that's a powerful, to me, that's a very powerful piece of this story that you told because, I think a lot of times when people say, I'm going to make this change, like you said, I don't want to get in trouble anymore, but you kept finding yourself in front of a judge. So was there something that happened or some steps, or maybe this is a hard question to answer, where you got to that point where you said, I'm going to change for me? Like what caused that for you?
I think I was so running. I'm not sure if this will answer your question, but hopefully it does. But the running aspect ended up being such a profound thing in my life because I can look back at the rest of my life and realize that due to drugs and alcohol and addiction and all that, like I lacked a passion. There was nothing that made me excited to be alive, excited to wake up in the morning. There was no reason to want to be sober, no reason to want any of these other things. So when I started running and started doing it so consistently and then getting better at it and then running races and then placing in races and winning races, that became this new thing in my life where this became far more important to me than any drug or drink could be. Yeah. And so now it became a thing of, before my life was, if you're not going to help me able to get money or help me get drugs, I don't need you in my life. Now, if this thing is not helping me become a better runner or helping me become a better ultra runner, be healthier, I don't have time for it. I don't want it around. And so it sounds really simple and sounds kind of funny, but I literally used to break every decision I made by I'd ask myself two questions. And it was, is this going to help me stay sober? And is this going to help me stay out of prison? And so it went for everything, right? And so there were days where I'd wake up and it would be cold or raining or too hot out and my alarm goes off. It's 4:30 in the morning. I don't want to get up out of bed. And so everything in my brain and my body is just telling me to hit snooze again. But I'd have to ask myself those two questions. Is this going to help me stay sober? And is this going to help me stay out of prison? And I try to use this example with clients that I work with all the time. And you have to figure out what is your why? What is the reason you're doing this? What is the most important goal you have in your life? If your most important goal is to lose weight, to get sober, to get out of trouble, it sounds good to say that, but is that truly what your biggest goal is? Because if it's truly your biggest goal and you're motivated to do it, then you're willing to make some sacrifices to do that. And so at that moment, staying out of prison and getting sober were the two most important things in my life. And so on those days, the alarm would go off and I'd have to ask myself the questions. Is me hitting the snooze button like I have for previously in my life? Yeah. It hasn't gotten me anywhere. So obviously I need to get up and get out and go do this. And I did. And it just became a working part of my mind. And so it goes for the people I choose to allow to be around me, to the food I put in my body. Is this helping me work towards that goal? If it's not, I don't have time for it.
I love it. So you've made some massive accomplishments, right? So you had a documentary made about you. You've changed your whole life. You are accomplished in the gym, accomplished as a runner. How do you stay humble? Because you are, and I know this is a hard question to answer because you are humble, but how do you stay humble when you've had so many amazing accomplishments? And maybe you've had people in your life that, you just want to shake them and be like, come on, man. But how do you stay humble and not lose that piece of yourself?
I think I spent so much time on the other side of it that a lot of my life now is, in all honesty, there's imposter syndrome, and I still get the feeling like somebody's going to pull the rug out from under me and be like, psych, we're kidding. But I will say that I've had some very valuable lessons since getting sober, and because of the documentary, because of being able to travel around and speak, I've met and been around a lot of people, and I've met a lot of super inspirational people. But I've also met some people that have amazing stories and are inspirational, but they don't necessarily use those stories to help people. They use those stories for personal gain. And so early in recovery, in this journey of sobriety, I was around people that were like that had a lot of notoriety, a lot of popularity, and I watched them use that for selfish gains. And because I was so selfish in addiction, I can identify that very easily, and I see it, and it just made me sick to my stomach. And because I was so far on the other end of the spectrum in addiction, now I just see it, and it's just so polar opposite of what I am now in sobriety. And so I just, I don't know. I don't know.
That's a perfect answer.
For one time in my life, I'm able to learn from other people's mistakes. We'll say I didn't know how to do that before.
Yeah, that's a really beautiful answer. So talk to me about the I Am Redemption podcast. Of course, I'm going to ask you where people can listen to it and find it, but what made you want to start that or first of all, tell us what it even is, and then what made you want to start it?
Yeah. The podcast is just about trying to put some positivity out into the world. And so I've been, we turn on the news, look at social media. There's so much negativity out there. Yeah. Especially now we got elections coming up, all this and that. Everything you see on the news is negative. And so that was like my initial thought. But speaking, I do a bunch of different things, but speaking was like my passion. I love being able to get up and stand in front of people and be able to speak and watch, I watch people laugh, watch people cry when I speak, and to be able to pull emotion out of people like that, I knew it was something powerful and something cool. And I never dreamt that a world existed where I could kind of take all that negativity and use it for good, use it to help people. And so the speaking really started to teach me that. And I had done a speaking event somewhere one time. Somebody came up to me afterwards, and then they were like, I don't even know what you do, Shawn, but I just want to help the cause. I just want to help you out. And so sat down with them. They introduced me to some people. And then eventually I would meet the people I work with now for the podcast. And they just kind of provided me the opportunity and started talking to me about it. And it wasn't anything I had ever even really thought of. But the one thing that we had in common was they asked me what I thought about social media. And I was like, I'll be honest, I don't like it. I'm not good at it. I go on there to look at my sports, and that's about it. And they're like, well, if you do a podcast, you don't really have to worry about social media much because you can use the clips for the podcast or the clips for the social media. And I was like, I'm in, let's do it. Yeah. So we sat down and we did the first episode of the podcast, and I loved it from that moment on. And I truly started to understand that I could bring people from all different walks of life on to be able to share their story like I've been able to do. And it's so cool to be able to put some positivity out into the world and to get messages from so many people on how it's impacting them. Excited about some of the guests I've had on. And it's cool. It's not just for addicts. It's not just about recovery. I've had more people on that aren't even in recovery, but that's the thing. Like, you don't believe, you look at a heroin addict and you're like, oh, I don't have anything in common with them. But when you start comparing the stories, at the end of the day, we've overcome adversity, and now we're just trying to help hope and inspire people.
Where can people go to listen to it? Because I love the show personally, but
it's on all major platforms. The video is on YouTube, and then the audio is on all the other major platforms. So Apple, Amazon, Spotify, you name it, iTunes, we're on there.
Okay, I got a couple questions that we always ask everyone. First of all, besides the podcast, where can people find out more about you? Like if they want to book you as a speaker, they want to find out what you're doing next, just where's the best place for them to do that?
So they can go on iamredemption.com, or they can get me on any of my social medias. It's iam.redemption on Instagram, or iam.Shawn Livingston on Instagram. It's the podcast page and the personal page. And then all the other social medias are just Shawn Livingston, SHAWN, and you should be able to find me on there.
And we'll put links in the show notes to all of that too.
Thank you.
So most of us, like I know me personally, I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for at least a couple great mentors in my life. And I've had a few. When you think about that, can you think of even just a couple maybe that for you were pivotal in getting you to where you are today?
The number one person, her name is Penny Lane. I told you a little bit about her when you and I originally met. And so Penny was the first person that saw something in me I didn't see in myself. And so she was the one that knew how to poke me competitively. And within a year, she had me running 100K of even running my first steps. And so, oddly enough, Penny is the vice president. She was the vice president of cybersecurity for Visa. And it's bizarre to me how a 4-time felon who's been kicked out of the military could end up becoming best friends with somebody like that. But she took a chance on me, and she's one of my best friends to this day. She's definitely the number one person. My stepdad, my father left when I was 2, and so my stepdad came into my life a little bit later, and I could not ask for a bigger beacon of what a man should be, or a role model of growing up as a man. So I'd say that's number 1 and 2 right there.
That's awesome. Thank you. And it is amazing. I love when the mentor stories are people that you would never imagine being together, right?
Yeah.
Honestly, one of my mentors is a great world-renowned psychologist. And it's like, how would I ever even meet someone like that and have him as a mentor? Like, doesn't make sense, right? So, okay, now I know you're an avid reader from talking to you before. It doesn't have to be about what we talked about, but are there any books that you would like to recommend for people to read?
For sure. First and foremost, we gotta shout out Dr. Abby's book. If you haven't read that, check it out. I'd say my favorite book of recent is Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. It was a definite eye opener. If you don't know who he is, he's a retired Navy SEAL commander, and just a wealth of motivation and discipline. And I like him just because he cuts right to the point. There's no fluff or anything like that. But that book's helped me big time.
I love that. We've never had that recommendation. And it's kind of a tease to recommend Dr. Abby's book, because Shawn and I had the privilege of reading it, but it's not out until the month after this podcast comes out. So all of you better go pre-order it and get ready. It really is an amazing book. And I'm not just saying that because she's a friend. It was very unexpected how deeply moving that book was, but how powerful it was to use all the things that happened to her in her life and then be able to bring science into it and talk about how it can work for anyone. It was fascinating. I love it.
She was gracious enough to come on my podcast, and her episode is going to be coming out very soon. And just, the amount of vulnerability that she showed, and just how smart she is and everything like that. It was just a pleasure of an episode.
Yeah, she is quite an amazing young woman, really. Shawn, I can't thank you enough. I mean, I know for you, you're very open about your experiences, and it's not easy to talk about our failings, especially when there are so many times, and it's difficult to kind of come back from that. But your example really does. I love what you said in your bio that, you kind of living proof that no matter how bad someone falls, they can get back up and they don't have to stay down there. So thank you for sharing with us and being a great example that you are. I really mean that.
Absolutely. And if anybody that's listening to this, if they need help, one thing about when I go speak places, one of the first things I'll usually say is I'm willing to bet anybody in this room is either related to or has somebody connected to them who suffers from addiction or alcoholism or mental health. And usually when I say that, every eye locks on me. So if there's anybody listening to that, if you have somebody, one of your friends, family, anything that need help, that's what I do, is try to help people get the help that they need. I work with some of the best places in this country here in Texas. And so if somebody needs that, please don't hesitate to reach out on any of my social media handles or the website or anything.
That's an awesome offer. Thank you for that. And thank you all for joining us this month. I'm sure this was a pretty heavy episode, but it's a really useful one. And we didn't plan this, but next month, our guest is Dr. Abby, and not on the Doctor is In series. We're going to have her right here in Human Element because we're going to be dissecting her book and talking all about it. So when you join us next month, maybe you have your copy in hand and you'll get to hear right from the author all about how she wrote that book and what motivated her to do that. Until next month, everyone, please stay safe and secure. See you.